So David fought them and recovered. David fought them from dusk until evening of the next day, and none of them got away except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock, saying, "This is David's plunder." Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him, and who were left behind at the Besor valley. They came out to meet David and the men with him. And David and his men approached. As he asked them how they were. But all the evil men and the troublemakers among David's followers said, "Because they did not go out with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go." David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike." David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. When David reached Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah, who were his friends, saying, "Here is a gift for you from the plunder of the Lord's enemies." David sent it to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth, Negev, and Jatar, to those in Aroer, Siphomoth, Estemoa, and Rakai, to those in the towns of Jerahmeelites and the Kenites, to those in Homa, Boashan, Athak, and Hebron, and to those in all the other places where he and his men had roamed. Now, earlier on, we saw that David had been raiding some territory of, the places where some of them may have been Israel, but some of them could have been the Philistines. And he sent to those who are in these places some of the plunder, saying, "This is what belongs to you." Yet earlier he had been raiding these same places. And there could have been a little bit of repentance there. There could be a sense of guilt, and he was trying to make peace with the same people that he had been pursuing their things and even stealing from them. We see also that David's men don't want to share, which is a very stingy, thing, that they went out and got the plunder from they got their families and their flocks and their property from the Amalekites after fighting them. And the men say that those who didn't come up with us, they shouldn't get it. And we see the attitude all the time where you're like, "I'm the one who struggled for this. Why should I give somebody else who wasn't part of it?" And yet we rescued their stuff. But David leaves the statutes, and he says that whoever, even those who remained with the supplies, are going to get part of the plunder or the booty from our from our attack of the enemies who stole our stuff. So David has his men wanting to kill him because they said, "Look, this is all happening because of you. We came and followed you, and now we've been raided, and all our kids are gone, and our wives and our property." And David had to strengthen himself in the Lord. And sometimes we have to do that, because we can only find strength in the Lord when people want to attack us and to kill us for something that is not directly our fault. Yes, he put himself in a position where he was literally getting enemies, and he learned the tough way that when you get yourself some enemies, you're gonna get attacked back by those same enemies. And that's what happened. It may not be those same enemies, but the same thing you do comes right back to you at some point. In chapter 27 or 28, we saw that he had joined with the Philistines, and now he was raiding the countryside and getting stuff back. And now what he had been doing has happened to him. And the men were furious, but The Lord led them because he sought to know what is the will of God concerning this. When I pursue them, am I going to get them back? And yes, he pursued, and he overtakes them, and he gets to an Egyptian who leads them on. And sometimes we get to that person who leads us to the next victory, and he finds that after consulting God. This is not a person who led them astray. He was actually a vulnerable party who had to tell him, spare me, make sure that you spare me, and I will tell you everything. And they did, and they spared him. And they actually gave him food. They gave him something to take, despite the fact that they knew that he had been part of the party that raided them. So there we see David and his men getting back what was stolen from them, as we need to do as Christians. We need to fight and get back what the enemy has stolen, and we need to pursue, because if David had not pursued, he would not have gotten back his wives and his children, and he would have sat and assumed they were dead, but they were not dead. Remember, they led everybody along. The Amalekites had kept them alive and led them along together with them. They didn't kill them, which is also a favor from God, because if they had killed them, then all of these people, his followers, all of David's followers would have demanded from David his life for their life. But God kept them, and so he was safe. So yes, we see the character of David growing here, and he sends all these gifts of the plunder, yes, from the plunder of the Lord's enemies, and he sent them specifically to the elders of Judah, who are his friends. So he's making the gifts of from his plunder make way for him, which is interesting, because all this works out for good. Even if he had been a raider himself, and he had been raiding, and so he had been raided himself, he uses this plunder from the Amalekites to make peace with the elders of Judah. Very wise political move. So let's see what happens in chapter 31 next.